Hey ladies and gentlemen, Steven here from Redolessence. Welcome back. Thank you for tuning in. And in today's episode, we're going to be discussing 6 niche fragrance releases that came out in 2020. So make sure to stay tuned. Now, before I begin the video, I do want to mention that there is also going to be a giveaway attached to this video. All you need to do to enter the giveaway is, of course, make sure that you are subscribed to this channel. I would really appreciate your support. And also make sure to leave a comment down below with which fragrance from this list are you the most interested in trying. And I will pick the winner in 1 week's time. I will basically pin the winning comment to the top of the comment thread so that you know that you've won. And one winner will get a 5 ml decant of every single fragrance in this list. So you're going to be getting about 30 mLs worth of fragrance. Also, if you are new to this channel, I would really appreciate it if you could support by subscribing to it if you like fragrance related videos, lists, reviews, all that type of content. So let's get started. These are 6 fragrances that were released in 2020. 2020, despite the global pandemic, believe it or not, has been quite a busy year when it comes to fragrance releases. And these are fragrances that I happened to pick up. Maybe 1 or 2 in here were sent to me for review, but I'm going to go ahead and disclose which those fragrances are when we get around to them. But these fragrances are not in any particular order. I just sort of picked 6 niche fragrances from my collection, and I just went off the top of my head like, oh yeah, this was released in 2020, that was released in 2020. And I just want to put some of these in front of the camera, let you know how I feel about them, also describe a little bit of the smell to you guys, just so you have a better idea of, is this something that sounds like it would appeal to your personal taste? Is this something that in your opinion would be worth going out there and checking out the whole 9? So let's just go ahead and get it started. The first fragrance that I want to talk about is actually by Zoologist, and I have to be honest with you, this one I don't have a whole lot of experience with, but this one is Koala. Now, I had a chance to review Sloth. I've also been playing around a lot with the 2020 version of Bat, and if you are still interested, I'd be more than happy to do a comparison between the original and the 2020 version. With this one, however, I know it's composed by perfumer Spiros Drosopoulos, who is a Greek perfumer, and he has a company called Baruti. And I actually own some of his fragrances. There's one fragrance actually I own 2 bottles of, which is Chai, but I own it when it went under a different name, long story. And this one is a fragrance composed by him, and I love his style. I love that touch. I actually met him a few years ago, I think it was, at 10 Corso Como in New York, and he was doing an event there for Baruti because the boutique had picked up his brand, and it was just a pleasure being able to chat with him, meeting him in person, shaking his hand, which is something a lot of people can't do nowadays. But this is a really wonderful fragrance. You know, off the top, I got a little bit of a floral touch, and then there was almost like a honey component in here as well, which surprised me because a lot of the recent releases from the brand have had like this honey vibe going on in there. And if you are interested, I actually have the box here, so I don't mind opening it up and reading you some of the notes. So there's eucalyptus, menthol honey, gumdrops, mimosa, black tea, geranium, incense, spices, vetiver, and then in the base you have musk, amber, oak moss, vanilla, and sandalwood. I got mostly honey. I got a lot of honey in the opening, not as, you know, honey rich and as pollen rich as bee, of course, but I did get a little bit of that honey with that eucalyptus vibe. And you guys know this is something that I've said on my channel in the past as well, that eucalyptus kind of comes off smelling like Vicks Vapor Rub, and I don't like that smell. It's one that I equate to a few different things. We have like this Baby Ganix product that we use on our daughter the couple of times, you know, that she's gotten sick, and we rub it on her chest, and it just reminds me of being sick. That's not a good feeling to have, right? But in this fragrance, it doesn't do that at all. So I'm really happy of that. And I think from a Facebook post that I recall reading online, Victor Wong had addressed the same thing, that, you know, playing around with the note of eucalyptus has always been a challenge, and he found a way with the help of this perfumer to do it in a way that it comes across smelling smooth, slightly floral, slightly billowy, a little mentholated, a touch of sweetness in the base too, that amber dried down that is not overly sappy or sticky. It's just a really interesting fragrance. And again, I love that imaginative aspect. Like, is this what a koala's habitat would smell like? Pretty cool. The next fragrance on this list was released by one of our friends, and the company is Naughton and Wilson, and the fragrance is called Gravitas. Now, I've actually done a review of this fragrance, not on my channel though. I've actually done a review of it on my friend Carlos's channel. It was me, Carlos, and our mutual friend. He has a channel called The Voice of Fragrance. His name is Jason Budd, formerly known as 860 Cologne. And all three of us pretty much shared our thoughts on a Zoom chat that was recorded and published on YouTube. And we were talking about this fragrance, and as a lavender-based fragrance, I gotta be honest with you guys, I'm not the biggest fan of lavender. I do like it when it's done in a very different and very unique and out there sort of a way. So I'm thinking of fragrances like Eau Noire by Christian Dior, which is a Francis Kirkjohn composition that just like that resinous, that smoky coffee, immortelle, syrupy sort of a thing going on with the lavender, I think is really, really interesting. But there's actually something about this one that I really like. And when my daughter was born, I was wearing 1725 Casanova by Histoire de Parfum. So ever since then, I've always had an affinity for these barbershop types of fragrances. And this one is kind of along the lines of that fragrance. Also maybe Heritage by Guerlain or Invasion Barbare by Parfum MDCI. So it's that really polished, really well put together, gentlemanly sort of a fragrance. And by the way, just to disclose, the last two fragrances in this list were sent to me by the company. So that is awesome. I do like Gravitas by Naughton and Wilson. And also, I almost forgot to mention, this is the fragrance of fellow YouTube fragrance reviewer, Dan Naughton. He has a channel called Mr. Smelly. I'm gonna leave a link to it down below. So definitely make sure to check him out. He has a lot of really, really cool content. Also had an opportunity to meet him last February when I visited London. So the next fragrance in this list I purchased. It cost me about $360 if I'm remembering correctly. And it was a highly anticipated release of 2020, and this is the first time that this company has ever done a flanker, and I knew I had to purchase it because I bought the original back when it came out in 2012. I actually walked into, at the time, in New York on 117 Crosby Street, was carrying the brand, and I walked in and I said, I need a 100 ml of Interlude Man, and the proprietor of the store said, okay. And he got me the bottle, we completed the transaction, and I've been loving it ever since. And now they have released Interlude Man Black Iris, which is also dark and smoky and rich and herbal and peppery like the original, but this one obviously has the note of iris. So you have some floral ingredients in here that really add this sort of creamy, buttery texture in the heart of the perfume. Is this a more versatile and more wearable version of Interlude Man? Yes, it is. Is this a fragrance that I would recommend for somebody who wants something very dark and bold and daring and aggressive? I would say no. Check out the original Interlude Man. The original Interlude Man is unapologetic in its approach, whereas this one is a little bit more timid. And it's, you know, it's not as in your face. It doesn't shout at you. But I do like the fact that they cleaned that up a little bit. It's inspired by the paintings of Georgia O'Keeffe. I did a review of this one if you're interested in checking it out. If I remember, I'll try to leave a link down below. But definitely check out Interlude Man Black Iris. I think it's an awesome, awesome, awesome fragrance. One of the best releases of 2020. If I ever do decide to do like a top 10 or a top 20 of 2020, it'll be much higher up on the list. The next fragrance on this list is one that I actually had the opportunity of reviewing recently. This one was also sent to me by the company, but I think he just sent it to me as a friend. I don't think he was expecting a review from it. And in the past, he's actually, I'm sorry, Daniel. He sent me a lot of fragrances that I haven't reviewed. One of them being Fine Apple, if I'm not mistaken. But I've reviewed some of his newer ones like Wicked Good and this one. And this one I think is amazing. And this one is called Perfecto. And this one is this pear melon heavy fragrance. It has an aquatic overtone. There's a little bit of a floral touch on account of the note of Champaca, but it's a really nice, smooth, buttery, fruity, but not overly ripe in the case of like Pulp by Byredo. It doesn't have that thing going on in there. It's not as ripe as Fine Apple. That has a really juicy, bursting at the seams, sort of a pineapple note included in it. This one is a little bit more toned down, and there's also this, it's not listed as a note, but there's like this musky component that you get as the fragrance dries down. It's really, really interesting. And I would venture to say that it's probably because of the driftwood that, you know, it kind of smells a little bit, I don't want to use the word aquatic because I think that puts a certain image in people's minds, but I think it is because of the driftwood that sort of creates that aquatic thing that's going on in the opening. But I think it's a really great fragrance. Daniel, you did a wonderful job, so good job there. The next one on this list is one that I purchased recently. I saw it online, and I saw that for this perfumer, this indie perfumer, which I think is more niche now because he's well established and he has very high credibility, and I love his work so much. And I've purchased maybe 6, 7, or 8 fragrances by this person. No, actually it's more than 8 because he has a flash series and I own about 3 of those. So it might actually be closer to like 10 or 11. But this is one that I had to purchase recently. I think it was about 120 or 130 bucks. And this one is called Phallo Blue, and this is by Tower Perfumes. This is an aquatic fragrance that does it in a way that no other aquatic fragrance does it. And he is such a genius at doing this. In the case of number 2, L'air du désert marocain, which translates to the air of the Moroccan desert, he really puts people in the mindset of standing in the middle of that arid, dry climate. You have, baked goods, you have the spice market, and you have this aroma that is wafting in your direction. You get a deep lungful, but it just smells very dry and warm and ambery, and it's absolutely amazing. And he repeated that when he released fragrances like Au Cœur du Désert, which is the heart of the desert. It's very similar to that. Also Lonesome Rider and Lone Star Memories, kind of giving off this vibe of like a cowboy in a desert as well, but like lighting, I guess, cooking food or cooking a meal over a campfire. You have that smoky touch, but there's also a little bit of sweetness as well. And he does such a fantastic job at putting you in a certain frame of mind. This is olfactory art. And this one reminds me so much of being at the sea, but it doesn't do it in a way that Whetstone by Amarud or Selmaron by Healy, in a way that they do it. And I enjoy those fragrances as well. But I think those fragrances overly rely on this note or accord of salt. And this one doesn't use salt. There is something salty about it, I will admit. There is something salty about it, but this fragrance relies on the note of fennel. And I've only smelled fennel in a fragrance once before, and I think it was a perfume called like Tour de France, which is a really inexpensive fragrance, yellow box and everything. But this one is such an awesome fragrance, and I'm gonna love wearing this one in 2020. And again, I purchased this one, and it was a complete blind buy. I love the work of Andy Tower, everything from Un Rose de Kandahar to Vetiver Dance. And I just think he did a wonderful job with this one. So it has this fennel note up on top, which almost has this anise-like, licoricey, slightly camphorous, slightly herbaceous smell. It's awesome. It reminds me less of being in the deep blue sea, and it reminds me more of having a dream about being in the deep blue sea, if that makes any sense. Well done. And then the last one that I want to talk about, I hope I don't get the name wrong because I almost forgot it prior to shooting this video, but this one is by the company Berceuse. I had to look that up. I didn't know how to pronounce that, but I think it's called Allegretto 7.2. If I'm mistaken, I'm just gonna leave an annotation. But this one is inspired by Beethoven's 7th Symphony, or Symphony Number 7. And this one is a composition by Antonio Gardoni, who also has a company called Vogue. And he has these very dark, rich, smoky, gothic, brooding, haunting compositions. And I've had a chance to sample a few of the fragrances from his collection. I don't own a bottle presently. I would love to in the future. But also, if you're familiar with T-Rex by Zoologist, he composed that fragrance as well. And you know that birch tar sort of smoky aspect to it, the cade oil birch tar thing with the rose oxide, very dark. And this is something quite similar to that, a little bit more ambery and a little bit more centralized around the note of vetiver. So it opens up with this very dark, smoky, earthy, and rooty vetiver note, a bit dry as well, but you have this ultra smoky component sort of enveloping the fragrance. This is yet another fragrance that I would mention when talking about fragrances that carry more so of an artistic appeal, as opposed to fragrances that are efficient and functional in the sense that, oh yeah, I can wear this anytime I want, right? When I'm going to work, when I'm going to school, when I'm going to the club, when I'm going to the bar, when I'm going to the park with my kids. I don't necessarily feel like this is that type of fragrance. This is a very special fragrance in the sense that there's going to be a small percentage of the community in the industry that smell it and they're going to fall head over heels in love with it. It's one of those things, you know, you either love it or it's just a fragrance that you don't vibe with. And I think the fact that this one is as daring as it is going to be indicative of the fact that you're gonna have that small populace, that small percentage of people that are going to absolutely love it. And there's also gonna be a lot of people who are gonna smell it and they're gonna be like, yep, it's not for me. So if you have any experience with T-Rex by zoologist Tyrannosaurus Rex, to give it its full name, I think you're gonna have a pretty solid idea of what this fragrance smells like. It's very dark, and I don't want to use the word challenging, you know, because I think everybody is capable of smelling it. Everybody is capable of appreciating it. And I love this one. I really, really enjoyed this one, you know, and one of the reasons why I especially love smelling fragrances like this is because it gives me an opportunity to smell something that I haven't smelled before. Do I like Interlude Man Black Iris? Yes, of course I do. But a part of me was like, oh, okay, this is a modified version of the original. So, you know, it wasn't, as much as I love it, it wasn't as exciting for me. In the case of this fragrance, and certainly in the case of Koala, these fragrances really excited me in 2020. And hey, I hope you had a fun time hanging out and hearing me discuss 6 fragrance releases from 2020 on the niche side. Obviously, this is not a top list in any way. I wasn't ranking them according to what I like the best and what I like the least. They were just sort of in a random order. But if you would like for me to do a video where I do discuss what I find to be the best of 2020, that's more than likely a video that I will shoot later on in the year once more fragrances come out. There are also some fragrances that I own that I would like to review, but I'm, you know, kind of hesitant on talking about them yet. I haven't tried them enough, and you know, some of them are not officially out, so I'm just sort of in the testing phases. But anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, there is a giveaway attached to this video. If you would like to be entered to win a 5 ml decant of every single fragrance in this list, all you have to do is leave a comment down below and just let me know, of all 6 fragrances in this list, which one sounds the most interesting to you, and I will go ahead and enter you in the draw, where I will be selecting the winner in 1 week's time. So of course, make sure to come back to this video in a week to see if you've won. Again, if you took something of value from this video and you're not subscribed to my channel, what are you waiting for? Please subscribe. I would love your subscription. I'm not asking for a donation or anything. Just you watching my videos is enough for me. So thank you so much. I love you all. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.